Okay, so the first thing that I want to start with tonight is telling you guys that this is probably going to be the last class optional Zoom meeting. You know, the next one would technically be week 14, but we are going to be like in the thick of our final portfolio, and basically all you guys are going to be doing at that point is revisions and things like that. So I kind of want to reserve that time for anyone who wants to meet with me individually. So, you know, I'll set aside that time for anyone who wants to meet with me to discuss revision strategies instead of holding a whole class. So maybe what I'll do instead is I'll send out a Zoom link and people can show up when they want, but we won't be covering like any new content, maybe is what I'll do. I don't know. I haven't really figured it out yet, but when we get closer to that, I'll let you guys know what's going on. But this will be the last, like all of us together, or, you know, the four of us that are together now. So tonight what I want to cover is finishing up Unit 3, kind of covering some things that I typically see when I'm grading these, and how what people usually get marked down on, and how to avoid that. And then I will get into the final portfolio. Okay, so first thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. We're going to go ahead and look at some resources for Unit 3 and some things that I want to point out. So if we go into our Unit 3, one thing that I noticed when I was preparing for this is that there was an error on the outline, not a huge one, but one that could confuse people. So I want to point that out. But basically, if you complete this entire outline, you should get a grade that you're very happy with on this paper. There was an error right here. It said, it did say, what are the downfalls compared to your chosen essay instead of PSA, which doesn't make any sense. So basically what you're doing here is point out which one is the best and the reasoning why it's the best, and then also look at your other 3 PSAs and tell us why they are less effective, right? You're kind of just comparing and contrasting here to help make a strong argument. Okay, so notice that error, this word has just been changed, that's it.
I have a quick question. Could we combine those 2 outlines together, or is it better if we have them in separate paragraphs?
You could join them together. If you're being like, if you're making a really solid argument, you might have them in 2 separate paragraphs, because you're going to point out, again, all the good things about the chosen one, and then you're going to go take us through the other 3 PSAs and tell us why they're not as good. It would work if you did it in one. But again, you're probably making a stronger argument if you have at least 2 paragraphs on it.
Thank you.
So some things that I typically see people get marked down for, one would be that they forget an intro and conclusion. They usually just jump right into their PSA. So make sure that you have an introduction and that you are concluding your essay. It's not a big markdown, but it does happen. Make sure that you have all 4 of your PSAs. Okay, a lot of people end up leaving out this information too when you're comparing your visual argument compared to your written argument from Unit 2, like how they communicate the same or differently. Okay, so make sure you have that paragraph. A lot of people end up leaving this out on accident. And probably the biggest markdown is the works cited. Okay, if you used an image that was not yours, you need to cite it. Okay, if you look here in the Unit 3 frequently asked questions and kind of scroll down a little bit, this tells you exactly how to cite images. Okay, and I even have a section on how to find and cite the images from the Canva documents. While I was looking at some of the rough drafts, I was seeing people say like, all of my images are from Canva. That's great, but what are the actual citations for the images? So make sure however many images you have, you're citing all of them in your works cited. Okay, that is the number one markdown I see for this essay, is not having that works cited correct. Okay. As you guys complete your peer reviews, that'll be completed tonight, and then you'll do check-ins with me. In your check-ins on Sunday, I will be providing general feedback as well about, some things that I'm noticing that you need to include or work on in order to get to a passing grade, or in this case, we're all trying to get an A on this essay. This is probably the easiest essay to get an A on out of the ones that we've written. So I'll be looking out for things that are haven't been included yet, especially like from the outline. Maybe you haven't written your argument yet, or you didn't include your works cited. I'll be pointing those things out to you in your check-in. So make sure that you're completing those so I can give you feedback. Any questions?
Will we have a chance to revise this?
Yes.
Okay.
It will be a very quick turnaround though. So
okay.
You'll probably be only given like a week for this one, just because we're like right at the end of the semester. But it should be an easier one to revise as well if you need to. Okay. Any other questions?
Are we required to have a certain amount of references for this?
No.
No. Okay.
Just make sure if you use an image, you cite it. And if you use like a statistic, cite it.
Okay. And then for the citations for the photos, are those to be placed underneath the photos, or are those to be placed on a separate page?
You're going to do it in a works cited document. So after your essay, include a works cited with all of your cited images.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
I know that Sienna is holding some office hours, I think Thursday and next Tuesday, just for like process work. If you're having trouble citing your images and you haven't had a tutor interaction yet, that would be a great opportunity for her to kind of walk you through the citations for those as well, if anyone needs that as well. So just an idea. Okay, I'm also happy to help as well if you're struggling with that. But this document here, I think, is pretty straightforward of how they should be cited. Okay, so check that out if you're having trouble with that. Any other questions? Okay, well then let's get into our final portfolio. I opened that today. So, actually, you know what? Sorry, there is one more thing that I want to point out. And that's the tutor interaction, because it's just a little bit different this time. Remember that you have options for your tutor interactions, but this one you have to actually submit something in order to get credit. Right before, I was just meeting with Sienna and she was telling me who was meeting the criteria for tutor interaction. This one you have to actually submit. So even if you just met with Sienna, you would just write in, I met with Sienna, and then I'll confirm with her. Okay, all these other ones require you to actually submit proof as well. So don't forget to do that. I have the assignment both here and in the week 13 folder, just so it's easy for you guys to find. Okay, so make sure you are doing that. You have to submit it yourself. Okay, now let's get into the final portfolio. Okay, same thing is going to happen with final portfolio. You'll have options, especially since it's a really quick turnaround. Really, you only have like 2.5 weeks to work on your final portfolio. What I recommend is, if you want to work with Sienna, which I highly recommend, in the first week or two, I would talk to her about revision strategies. Right, you guys can go over your past your unit 1 and unit 2 papers and talk about what revisions you can make. Or towards the end, she usually takes 10 students to look over their draft. You can use her that way for that cover letter draft. Okay, so otherwise you're probably just going to use the Writing Center and 24/7 online tutoring just for the cover letter, because I'm not sure that they can really how much or how helpful they would be to talk about revisions, especially unless you gave them my comments and things like that. But I don't know, up to you. It's your tutor interaction. You do that how you want to do it. But let's go ahead and look at the assignment. Okay, let me zoom in here too, so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so for this assignment, what you're going to do is you are going to revise both your Unit 1 and your Unit 2 essay. Okay, you can only revise those two for this assignment. Unit 3 is not an option. Okay, one of those needs to be a substantial revision, which means you're making pretty large changes, a lot of changes to your paper. Okay, and the other one is a polished, has to at least be a polished revision, meaning you're making just small changes, right? I have information on what both of those would look like, right? A substantial revision would be something like adding a page or two of new or revised ideas, rewriting significant portion of the piece, incorporating more sources, maybe adjusting the tone, revisiting the comments that I left, and editing and things like that. A polished revision is more so like, hey, I'm going to go in and fix up my grammar a little bit and my source citations. Okay.
But if we've already done this, then it's done, right?
Then it's done.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people will probably end up having two substantive revisions. Especially if they revise for a higher grade. Usually in order to get a higher grade, you have to do a substantive revision. So like Rachel just asked, if you already revised for a higher grade for Unit 1 and Unit 2, then you've already met this criteria. You're still going to resubmit those revisions with your portfolio, but you don't have to worry about doing those revisions again for the portfolio, if that makes sense, right? Once you have completed your revisions, then you are going to write a reflective cover letter. Okay. And essentially what this cover letter is you are proving to the reader that you have met the outcomes of the course, right? That you've put in the work, you've, learned everything that you've needed to learn for this class, and that you're ready to move on to the next level, right? So there are questions here that you'll want to answer. For the first part, it's going to be a reflection of your work over the semester. So you'll kind of tell me, what kind of reviser, writer, reviewer, thinker were you at the beginning of the semester, and how has that changed to now? Like, how did you view writing in the beginning of the semester, and how has that changed, if at all, and why? What have you learned about writing this semester? Try to identify specific things that you've learned. Tell the story of your portfolio. How did you decide where to begin? How much time did you spend on it? What are you most proud of? What did you struggle with? Things like that. Then you'll tell the story of your substantive revision. Tell us what big changes you made and why, and what was your writerly decision making like. Same thing for your polished revisions. What kind of changes did you make and why? Okay, so this is all reflecting on the work that you've done. Okay, this should probably be about 2 to 5 paragraphs, right? You could do one on each bullet point. Some of these you could probably combine together. Okay, here is where, this is probably the most important part of the paper here is the explain section, because this goes through the course outcomes, and you are going to argue that you have met these course outcomes by pointing to specific places in your work where you've met those. So, explain to us how you've demonstrated the ability to produce writing that makes a claim and supports it with sustained, specific, organized, coherent, and unified evidence, right? What you can do. So, for example, you could say, in my Unit 2 essay, you can see that I'm making an argument by making claims and supporting them with evidence, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so tell us that you've met the outcome, and then tell us how you've met that outcome. And there are 4 different outcomes here that you need to address. So each of these you need to at least spend a paragraph on. Okay, this again is worth the most points for this essay, because again, you're proving to us that you've met the outcomes. And then you're going to project, you're going to look to the future. This one should be about 1 to 2 paragraphs. You're going to tell us about the connections you anticipate between what you learned in 102 and any future writing, research, persuasive situations you may encounter in the future. And this doesn't have to all be about writing, right? There might be something that you learned about just communicating in general that you would use in the future. For example, hey, whenever I am having a conversation with someone and it turns to an academic argument, I'll know that I always need to support my claims with evidence, right? Not necessarily related to, it's related to argumentative writing, but it's something that you can use in a different area of your life. Okay, so don't think just about writing or school. Think outside the box here as well. School, work, personal relationships, right? How can you use these skills in all areas of your life? Okay, so think about that. And then if you only remember 2 things about writing from English 102, what should you remember and why? What are the 2 main takeaways that you want to take away from this class? Okay, so again, that should be about 1 to 2 paragraphs. Okay, so when everything is done with this final portfolio, what you're going to do is you're going to submit 3 separate Word documents. You'll have the reflective letter, the revision of Unit 1, and the revision of Unit 2. And again, if you've already done the revision for Unit 1 and revision for Unit 2, you're just resubmitting those revisions again. Okay.
Is it okay? Do you know how when you resubmit them, it still has all your comments on the side? I don't know how to get those off. Is it okay if we resubmit them with the comments on there?
Let me show you how to take them off.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, do you mind if I pull yours up real quick?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. That's not yours. I just have been looking at some of these. Okay, so if you go to the review tab, okay, and you go to this little comment box, and you click down and you just click delete all comments in document, and it'll take them all away.
Oh, okay.
So I went like that, and you see that all mine went away. Since we're looking at this, I think it's in either week 13 or week 14, I show you guys a tool called Word Compare. And this is the same tool that I use when I grade your revisions. You can see all this blue.
Mm-hmm.
That's all stuff that's been added to the paper. So I can see exactly what revisions you made to your paper. Okay, like the green underline means that it was moved, right? So I can see all the revisions that were made, and you can use this same tool, the Word Compare tool, to help you see what revisions you made, especially if you made them a long time ago. So yeah, it helps you remember what to write about in your reflection. So that's a good tool to use for anyone who wants to use it. There's a video on it in one of the weekly folders. Okay, just for anyone who needs that. Okay, any questions so far with like revisions, cover letter, anything like that? Okay, so again, when you submit this, in part 1 of the submission, there's 2 parts of the submission. You're going to do the 3. You're going to have the reflective cover letter, the revision of Unit 1, and the revision of Unit 2. Then you're also going to have to submit your signature assignment, right? Every course has a signature assignment. That's going to be part 2. You only need to submit your cover letter for that one. Okay, so it's not a separate assignment. You just have to submit them separately. Okay. Any questions with that? I'll actually go to that final unit so you can see that there are 2 parts. So this one, you need to submit all 3. This one is just your cover letter. Okay. Again, if you kind of look at the schedule for this unit, it's pretty light because I want to give you guys time to make those revisions and write your cover letter and things like that. So there's not a whole lot going on in those last couple weeks. And I know you guys have a lot going on in other classes as well. So hopefully that helps out as well. I do provide kind of an outline. It's basically just those questions that I asked because really all you have to do is answer those questions in paragraph form to complete this assignment. It is in letter format, which means that there is no like actual format. Most people, if you look at the student examples, they kind of just write it as a letter like, hey, dear Mrs. Hutton and CWI English 102 colleagues, right? And then they write their essay. Okay. It only needs to be 2 to 3 pages, but sometimes when you get into answering these questions, it's very easy to get to like 4 or 5 pages when answering these questions. Okay, so check these out. I also have that breakdown of the rubric so you can see how this is graded. You'll see again that, you know, your reflection is 15 points. The explain the argument is 25. Again, that's worth the most points. Projection, 10 points. Structure, 10. Grammar, 10. So again, this is where most of the points are coming from. So if you're going to put in the most effort somewhere, it should be here, right? Making this argument. Okay. All of these should be available to you to view. Okay. Any questions about finishing up Unit 3, final portfolio? No? All right, well, I will keep you guys updated about what's going to happen with that final optional Zoom. Again, I don't think I'll hold an optional Zoom because there won't be a whole lot of new information that I have for you because you'll just be working on those revisions in that cover letter. So again, it'll probably just be opened up for anyone who just wants to meet with me to talk about the revision or cover letter or something like that. Okay, so be on the lookout for that, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Last chance for questions. All right, guys, well, have a great day/week. I'll be talking to you soon. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.